$560 million. One ticket. One name on that ticket that the entire world was legally forbidden from ever knowing. Somewhere in New Hampshire, a woman walked into a gas station, bought a Powerball ticket, and became one of the richest people in the state overnight. And then she did something almost nobody in lottery history had ever successfully pulled off before. She fought the government in court and won the right to disappear. If you won $500 million tomorrow, what is the very first phone call you would make? Would you tell your family immediately, or would you sit on it for weeks like this woman did? Type your answer below. I read every single comment on these videos. And before I tell you how this actually played out, I want you to guess right now in the comments. Do you think staying anonymous after winning big actually protects you? Or do you think it eventually destroys you from the inside because of the secrets you have to keep? Drop your prediction now, because by the end of this video, you are going to find out exactly what happened to people who chose both paths. And if you know someone who just came into money, an inheritance, a settlement, a bonus, anything, send them this video before they make a mistake that cannot be undone. Quick thing before we get into it. If you like these deep dives into real financial mysteries and the people behind them, hit that like button and subscribe, because I put these together every week and you do not want to miss the next one. Now let's go back to January 6th, 2018. The Powerball jackpot had been climbing for weeks, and that night it landed on a single winning ticket sold somewhere in the state of New Hampshire. $559.7 million. At the time, it was one of the largest jackpots ever claimed by a single ticket in the history of the game. Somewhere out there, one person was holding a piece of paper worth more than most companies will ever be valued at. Here's the problem. New Hampshire law at that time required winners to sign the back of their physical ticket and have their full name and hometown released publicly the moment they came forward to claim the prize. That's standard in most states. The idea is transparency. The public gets to verify the lottery is legitimate and not rigged. But if you have ever read a single story about what happens to lottery winners after their name goes public, you understand immediately why this woman panicked. She hired an attorney named Stephen Gordon, and instead of signing her real name on the ticket, she signed it under the name of a trust she created called the Good Karma Family 2018 Nominee Trust. Then she sued the New Hampshire Lottery Commission. She had already told a small number of people about the win. She had already started getting strange messages, and she was terrified, genuinely terrified, of what would happen once her name, her face, and her hometown were public record attached to over $500 million. Court documents referred to her only as Jane Doe. The case went in front of a judge, and this became a real legal battleground about whether privacy or public transparency wins when that much money is on the line. In March 2018, the judge ruled that she could keep her name private, but she still had to disclose which county she lived in, Merrimack County, and the Lottery Commission was still allowed to confirm basic details about the win. It was a partial win for her. Not full anonymity, but enough to keep her actual identity out of headlines forever. Think about that for a second. A regular person, someone who bought a $2 ticket at a convenience store, ended up in a real courtroom with real lawyers arguing that the state should not be allowed to destroy her privacy just because she got lucky. And she won that argument. To this day, most people have no idea who Jane Doe from New Hampshire actually is. She vanished into $500 million completely unidentified, which by lottery standards is almost unheard of. Now here's where I want you to pause the video for 1 second and comment which part of this story surprised you the most so far. Was it that she sued the government and won? Or is it what's coming up next? Because Jane Doe is not even the biggest anonymous jackpot in American history. That title belongs to a ticket sold less than a year later for almost 3 times the amount. October 23rd, 2018. A single Mega Millions ticket sold at a KC Mart gas station in Simpsonville, South Carolina, matches all 6 numbers. The jackpot, $1.537 billion. At the time, It was the second largest lottery prize ever won by a single ticket in the world. And unlike New Hampshire, South Carolina is one of the very few states in the country that allows lottery winners to claim their prize with 100% full legal anonymity. No lawsuit needed, no court battle. The law already protected them. For months, nobody came forward. Speculation exploded across the entire state. People wondered if the winning ticket had been lost, thrown away, forgotten in someone's coat pocket. Then, 182 days after the drawing, right before the claim deadline expired, a trust called the Beaverton Property Trust filed the paperwork and claimed the full jackpot. No name, no photo, no press conference, no interview. To this day, we do not know who won $1.5 billion in South Carolina. Not the media, not the neighbors, not even most lottery officials, beyond the small legal team that processed the paperwork. If you ask me, this is the smartest possible move anyone could make with that kind of money. And I say that as someone who has researched dozens of these cases. Because when you look at what happens to winners who do not get to stay anonymous, the pattern is almost frightening. Let's talk about Jack Whitaker. West Virginia, December 2002. He won $314 million in the Powerball. At the time, the largest single-ticket jackpot in American history. West Virginia had no anonymity laws, so his name, his face, and his hometown were splashed across every news outlet in the country within days. Whitaker was already a successful businessman before he won, worth several million dollars on his own. People assumed he would be fine. Within a year, his life fell apart in ways that are honestly hard to read about. His truck, which had over $500,000 in cash sitting inside it at a strip club parking lot, got broken into and the money was stolen. He was robbed again at the same club months later, and this time drugged. Lawsuits started piling up from people claiming he owed them money or had wronged them. His granddaughter, who he had showered with cash and gifts, died of a drug overdose in 2004. And Whitaker himself later said publicly that he wished he had torn up the winning ticket. He said the money destroyed his family. Those are close to his own words, spoken years later in interviews, filled with regret. Then there's Abraham Shakespeare. Florida, 2006. He won a $30 million jackpot, taking the lump sum of roughly $17 million after taxes. Word spread fast in his community, and soon everyone knew exactly who he was and exactly how much money he had. A woman named Doris D.D. Moore inserted herself into his life, claiming she wanted to help him write a book about his experience and protect him from people trying to take advantage of him. Instead, she systematically drained his accounts, convinced him to sign away rights to his remaining fortune, and in April 2009, Abraham Shakespeare disappeared completely. His body was found over a year later, buried under a concrete slab in her backyard. Moore was convicted of first-degree murder in 2012 and sentenced to life in prison. A completely public jackpot win led directly to a murder. And one more, because this one gets brought up constantly whenever people talk about the so-called lottery curse. William Post, Pennsylvania, 1988. He won $16.2 million. And within a year, his brother had hired a hitman to try to kill him and inherit part of the winnings, his own family. He also faced lawsuits from a former girlfriend claiming a share of the prize, went bankrupt within a few years despite the massive win, and was quoted saying that the lottery was the worst thing that ever happened to him. Here's my honest take on why this keeps happening over and over. It is not really about the money itself. It is about what public knowledge of the money does to the people around the winner. The moment your name and your face are attached to a number that large, you stop being a person to everyone around you, including people who claim to love you. You become a walking bank account. Every relationship gets a question mark hanging over it. Every phone call from an old friend, every unexpected visit from a cousin you have not spoken to in a decade, suddenly carries this ugly undertone of, do they actually care about me, or do they want something? That psychological pressure alone is enough to break people down, and that is before you even factor in the very real physical danger of criminals specifically targeting known lottery winners, which has happened repeatedly. This is exactly why anonymous winners like Jane Doe in New Hampshire and the Beaverton Property Trust in South Carolina made the decision they did. It is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition. They looked at what happened to people like Whitaker, Shakespeare, and Post, and they made absolutely sure it would not happen to them. And this is honestly reshaping lottery law across the entire country right now. States like Delaware, Kansas, Maryland, North Dakota, Ohio, South Carolina, and Texas already allow full or partial anonymity for large lottery winners. Other states have introduced bills in recent years specifically because of high-profile cases like Jane Doe's lawsuit, arguing that forcing transparency on regular citizens who happen to get lucky puts them in genuine danger. It is a real, ongoing legal and ethical debate. Transparency advocates argue the public deserves proof the lottery is not rigged. Privacy advocates argue that proof does not require sacrificing a person's safety and their family's safety for the rest of their lives. Which side of that do you actually land on? Because I want to know. If you won $500 million tomorrow and your state legally allowed you to stay completely anonymous, would you take that option? Or would you want the public recognition anyway? Comment below, because the answers on these videos always end up being way more split than I expect. What fascinates me the most, researching stories like this, is that we are talking about someone who is, right now, today, walking around completely unrecognized. The winner of that $1.5 billion Mega Millions jackpot in South Carolina could be your neighbor. They could be standing behind you in line at the grocery store. They could have already quietly bought a home in another country under an LLC nobody has ever traced back to them. That is the entire point. That is what makes this different from every celebrity or public figure story we usually cover. This is a person who had the single most life-altering moment a human being can experience with money, and then simply chose to keep living like nothing happened, at least on the surface. And honestly, when you line it up next to Whitaker's regret, Shakespeare's murder, and Post's family betrayal, it starts to look less like luck and more like the smartest financial decision any of these winners ever made. The real jackpot was never the money itself. It was the ability to keep the money without losing everything else that mattered: their safety, their relationships, and their peace of mind. So here is the lingering thought I want to leave you with. We spend so much time imagining what we would do with that kind of money, the houses, the cars, the trips, but almost nobody thinks about the part that actually matters most, which is who finds out, and when, and what that knowledge does to every single relationship you have ever built. The most valuable thing an anonymous winner buys is not a mansion. It is the ability to still trust the people around them. If you had to choose right now, complete anonymity forever or full public recognition with all that fame and attention, which one would you actually pick, and why? Put your honest answer in the comments. I want to see the debate play out down there. And if this story hit different for you, do me a favor, share it with one person, especially anyone you know who has ever daydreamed about winning big, because this is the side of that dream nobody warns you about. Hit like on your way out. Subscribe if you are not already, because there are a lot more stories like this one coming, and you do not want to miss the next case study. I will see you in the next video.